The following is a Barrett Sports Media production. We do the digging, so you don't have to.
We've got breaking news.
Breaking news.
Breaking news.
Bringing you the biggest stories from the industry you care about. This is the Media Noise Podcast.
Well, let's hear it.
Now, here's your host, Demetri Ravanos.
Welcome, and thank you so much for joining me this week and every week, by the way, that you listen to Media Noise. Don't forget to rate, subscribe, and review. It is the only way more people find out about this show, and it is the only way we get to keep doing more shows. It's kind of my job now that I'm running the BSM Podcast Network. We are going to talk all things college football as a new season is set to open. Last week, we sort of just focused on the pregame shows, but Arky, Shea, Garrett, Searight, they will be along in just a moment to join me to talk about all things college football media as we get set to start a new season. But first, I don't know what to make or how to make sense of Ken Carman's truly asinine comments that the backlash the media and thus the public are having to Deshaun Watson, his contract, the way the Browns have gone about just creating PR mess after PR mess for themselves is all about an anti-Cleveland Brown bias. So, we expect the Browns to step into crap every single chance they can, so we come down harder on them when they do. Look, I get it, man. Cleveland is a tight-knit place. They are diehards for their team. A lot of those Rust Belt cities are. I'm not taking away from the fandom at all. But Jesus Christ, read the friggin' room, right? I mean, this is a thing that has always kind of struck me, and I think you can really sort of juxtapose Ken's reaction, and frankly, other Cleveland media members' reactions as well. But Ken on his morning show on 92.3 The Fan is the one that just outright said, oh, they hate us because they ain't us. Cleveland Browns, whoop, whoop. I think you could juxtapose that to the way so many people in the media have reacted to the story about Matt Araiza, punt god, as he was once known when he was at San Diego State University. This was a guy that was hyped up by a lot of people in the college football media, regularly punting the ball 75 plus yards. And so when he was drafted by the Buffalo Bills, there was a lot of excitement of, oh, look at this guy coming to the NFL. Pat McAfee propped him up. Spencer Hall propped him up. So many people propped him up. And then this really ugly story about him being accused of participating in a gang rape of a minor while in school at San Diego State came out, and there wasn't a whole lot of apologizing from the media. What's the right way to say it? There wasn't a whole lot of standing your ground, I guess, from the media. In fact, you heard McAfee outright say, I'm sorry for having propped this guy up. Alex Kirshner, who is a college football writer at Slate, said that, he learned this a hard way because he had interviewed Matt. He thought Matt made college football fun. I think that is easier to do when we are talking about a national story versus a local story for a local audience. But the point is the same because the accusations, while not the same, one is rape versus sexual misconduct. One is criminal versus the other civil. We are still talking about somebody victimizing women. Right? We're still talking about, forget women. We're talking about someone victimizing the vulnerable, and I don't think it does Ken Carman, I don't think it does any local host any favors to play the whole they hate us because they ain't us kind of game around their guy who, by the way, suffers almost no consequence from this. It's not a great look. No broadcaster wants to be in that position, and I don't know how he thought those comments could be received any other way. So I bring in my cohorts, Arky, Shea, and Garrett Searight. We have been, the three of us, working all week long on Countdown to Coverage, where we have been putting a spotlight on everything college football media related. Gentlemen, the real season is finally here. We don't have to pretend Duquesne and Florida State is real football anymore. We get actual games this week. Garrett, I don't want to spend a ton of time because all of last week's episode was about game day versus big noon kickoff. But, that is what you picked as your favorite college football TV show, Big Noon. So tell me why this year with Urban Meyer back will be better than what we got last year without him.
Because he is significantly better than Bob Stoops. God bless Bob Stoops, a big name that would get people to tune in on Saturday, but is nowhere near as charismatic, I think, or as understanding maybe of the television product that Urban Meyer is. And he just brings a certain dynamic. One, it used to be a certain credibility that we could argue whether that exists anymore or not, but he brings.
No, we don't have to argue. It doesn't.
Fair. But he's one, he understands television because he dove into it and is like, I want to be really good at this. And, I don't know, not to speak ill of Bob Stoops, I don't know. I don't know that necessarily he had that same drive and ambition to be great at that as Urban Meyer does.
Arky, I kind of want to talk all three of us because on Friday, the last column in this series was about best television crew. Best play-by-play crew. I picked Gus and Klatt on Fox. Garrett, you picked the primetime crew on ABC, Kirk and Chris Fowler. Arky, you went with Brad and Garrett on CBS, Brad Nessler and Gary Danielson. And I know we're a year away from from the Big Ten coming on to CBS and NBC's radar, but I do wonder, as a guy that grew up a lifelong SEC fan, have you considered that this might be the last year that those two are exclusively doing SEC games?
It's not actually crossed my mind at all, to be honest with you. Like when we were sort of formulating this idea for this assignment, I was mainly concerned with when I tune into a broadcast, like what are the voices that tell me I'm listening to college football and that this is an important game? And there are lots of great broadcasters out there, lots of great commentators out there too, colormen and sideline analysts. But the best in the business has been Brad Nessler in the booth for a long time for me. That is a voice that I have loved forever. I think there's a gravitas in the way he presents the game that really sort of elevated CBS to another level. Even though I was a big Vern Lundquist guy, some of his mispronunciation foibles that people wanted to poke fun at, some of these names are hard. Like no one knew what a Tua Tagovailoa was when he came in, or even a Johnny Manziel for that matter. But the thing is, I think the biggest pushback I get was sort of with Gary Danielson. But I'll argue this till the day I die, which could be on next episode. I get a Media Noise. Gary Danielson does so much work going into the game that this guy was predicting plays before Tony Romo made it a cool thing. Now we do it like once or twice a broadcast most because he'd see what he saw at practice, what he's paying attention to film. And then you felt like he knew something you didn't know. And you make fun of him all you want, not you personally, but other people can.
No, I will.
That guy speaks college football to me, and he has been great. And he's been on that broadcast forever.
I would also like to point out he is the one that last year said, and I quote during the Iron Bowl, Bo Nix took a shit in the pocket.
Okay, now to be fair to him, I think that was 2 Iron Bowls ago.
Was it 2?
So I would like to just give him that.
For everybody listening, the reason Arky knows this is because I immediately texted him and said, "We just heard Gary say took a shit, right?"
Yeah, and listen, Gary Danielson's also like he's a little more the everyday guy, even though some people think he's Purdue hoity-toity. Like he just talks like he's a guy for the most part. So sometimes, words slip, and for me that's very much okay. Like this is not a perfect business. I'm not looking for perfect nomenclature, for perfect diction. I'm looking for guys who know the game and sound like they know the game.
Garrett, you're a Big Ten guy, so you obviously watch a lot more of Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt than either Arky and I do. Now, look, I picked them as my favorite play-by-play team, and really, I think Klatt's a knowledgeable guy. I think he's a very good analyst. I am a Gus apologist through and through. I wrote this in the piece that whoever long ago decided that college sports had to sound like church, I hate their guts, and I hope they roll over in their grave every time Gus is on a call. But you're the one, like for you, it's your Buckeyes. Literally most weeks, it is your Buckeyes on the Big Noon Saturday game. How do you feel about Gus on the call of that game, approaching this very differently than anyone else in the college football broadcasting business?
So an overarching, I like Gus a lot. there are just some times where he's screaming and I'm not certain why. Like, I get that there is adrenaline pumping through your veins. Like, there's the the famous play where I guess I don't remember, was it Denzel Ward who blew up the Maryland wide receiver, and he's like, "You having a barbecue and you didn't invite me?" Like, that's a perfect response to, like, that fits the moment. And then other times on like a 3rd and 3 when they get a 4-yard carry, and he's like, "Oh!" Like, okay, Gus, it's like, it's the first quarter.
My favorite is after something
Gus
like that, and they go to break, and he'll yell, "Oh my goodness, Fox Sports!" That is probably my favorite thing that Gus Johnson does. Period. All right, so we are probably in the last year of basically understanding college football to be a lot of ESPN, now a lot of Fox, and CBS and NBC sort of dip their toe in the water, right? Like, we're going to get a lot more NBC soon. CBS, at least for 1 year, is going to have that transition. I would bet they end up with some rights from either the Pac-12 or the Big 12 to partner with this secondary or tertiary Big Ten game they're going to get each week. But Arky, you wrote a piece this week outside of our countdown to coverage stuff that really hammered home, like, what we're looking at, man. Every network that covers the NFL has a big pregame show, and you say there's no reason not to think that that's coming to college football too.
Yeah, that is huge for me. Is that when you're sort of forecasting what you sort of see happening? I can't remember, and I'm a young lad of just under 40. I don't know a time when all network television was anywhere near this invested in college athletics. And so, as you could tell, live sports draws ratings. Live sports, it's still drawing lots of advertising dollars, so much so that, other companies, other networks are paying double rights fees for what it was for the National Football League. College football just sent the sent to the Big Ten $1 billion a season for their rights deals. There's no reason now to see what NBC is doing with the Peacock, but also if they re-up with Notre Dame, and if they find themselves with the Big 12 deal, which is the story reporting has been out there, is that they're very interested in a deal like that, to sort of see a triple header from them, to see a triple header, of course, was already with ABC with all of their coverage, a triple header with Fox, clearly, because they still have Big 12 rights, and I'm assuming they'd like to keep some big Pac-12 rights too. And then CBS. CBS has been rumored to also be very interested in either a Big 12, Pac-12 package, or even a group of 5, a strong group of 5 package that they would like to do. So if you're going to continue to see all this money being put into it, if you're putting double and triple headers on your networks on the Saturday, treat it like the NFL. Give it a nice pregame show too. Make it an event, and all of a sudden you've got competition to sort of go to where you wake up on your Saturday mornings.
CBS, I believe, already has a relationship with the Mountain West as part of the CBS Sports Network package. Like, that would certainly cover that primetime slot. It would be nice to see my beloved Bows on network television opposed to everything being on an app. But we'll certainly see. One thing that I think all three of us really enjoyed is we put a spotlight on the best digital media property as it relates to college football. All of us picked podcast. Arky, you picked the Solid Verbal. Garrett picked Andy Staples Show, and I picked the Shutdown Fullcast. Like, to me, and I understand that it is because of how invested in college football the three of us are as fans. I don't think any sport is as good online as college football is. There are certainly NBA podcasts I like. There are certainly betting podcasts I like, but I think college football online just has its own unique identity. And you guys tell me if I'm wrong. I think you guys are deeper into other sports than I am. Am I right to say college football kind of does the most with the internet?
Oh, absolutely. Like the college football subreddit is fantastic. College football Twitter is as fun as Twitter can be, except for Florida State. The digital presence, and it's almost the flip side of, you talked about the broadcast being, stuffy. The college football on the internet is the exact opposite. Like, this is fun because it's supposed to be fun. Like, right. And people make it fun. And I think more than anybody else, college football does that better digitally than any other sport.
Garrett's right. Like, there's 133 FBS teams coming up in the next couple of seasons that you talk about basically being able to include the entire country into a conversation. And college football just has more options that way. College football embraces sort of the seriousness to a degree of wanting to break down, who's the best Power 5 conference, but also the bizarreness of like, what do we name the new South Carolina Live mascot?
Yes.
Like there's just, you enjoy the serious and the frivolity of it. And like, you just don't have the Packers Bears meet for the 407th straight time kind of like this means life and death, as opposed to what college football fans were, which is like, this is a damn good time every Saturday.
I do want to ask everybody one last question, because this has been a hotly debated thing, not just at the site, but all around. What do we do with Lee Corso? And I don't even necessarily mean, do we keep him? Do we get rid of him? How do we contextualize Lee Corso in 2022?
I think Lee Corso still is what drives that show, as far as like what has become like essentially without Lee Corso and that energy and how that sort of show began. Like that show literally is just show up and listen to us talk about, David Pollock's top inside linebackers. It's not
Right.
quite the same. And hey, listen, maybe Luke Bryan shows up and gives you a celebrity pick. Like Lee Corso revolutionized a really simple idea like that no one can do once he's gone. Like there's just no way you're allowed to do it. So I think for that reason, I'd like to protect him and bring him out for like a maximum of 2 segments of show. But like if you could make him like a wrestling supercard, and you build and you build and you build, and everyone's there for that big main event, the big payoff, it's the headgear pick. I think you could protect him to a degree with that, and still not make him sort of feel like he's an albatross out there, just sort of slowing down the program. But I do think I agree with Ryan Brown, who gave wrote one of our columns earlier the week on the site, who said, "Dude's 87. The dude revolutionized this and figured it out. The dude gets to choose when he leaves."
I'm on the flip side of that. I say this telling you that someday Lee Corso will die, and I will sob along with Kirk Herbstreit on that College Game Day Saturday when they bring it up and talk about it. I will sob like a child because I love the man, and because I love the man, I don't want to see the performance that he had on Saturday. And I realize part of that is the delay and those things. But for a couple of years now, he's struggled to get out sentences that he wants to say, and has said, I have to script what I want to say. When it's at that point, and I realize nobody at ESPN wants to be the one to say, "Hey, we gotta do something here," and I realize that nobody wants to replace him, because I don't think anybody can replace him. You can hire Ed Orgeron or Mike Gundy to be the next Lee Corso, but they're not going to be the next Lee Corso.
I assume Mike Gundy is already contractually tied to OAN for a pregame show.
That's probably fair. I don't even know what conference is playing on Newsmax or whatever, but the eventual Newsmax.
It's just Liberty
Saturday. Games. Oh gosh. True. But like Lee Corso,
discuss the Notre Dame package.
That's you're right. Any problematic school Newsmax.
I think you pre-produce a segment where Lee Corso still makes his picks at home, and you let him take as many tries as it takes to be as good and fantastic as he wants to be. Make him still feel like he's a part of the show, but for 3 hours every Saturday, he just can't do it anymore. And I realize that's like saying to your grandpa, like, "Hey, you shouldn't be driving anymore," or whatever. Nobody wants to have that conversation, but somebody needs to have the berries to have that conversation and say, "Hey, LC, we love you, but this is the last go around. Like, we're going to take you on a farewell tour. People are going to tell you how much they love you, but this has to be it."
Garrett's right. And Demetri, let me ask you about that. By the way, Garrett, you're one of the only 2 people I know that can call him LC because you guys are buds.
We go back a long way.
Graduated from
Demetri,
college.
let me just sort of ask you to sort of contextualize that for you. Lee Corso is sort of that guy, but do you think you could minimize him to that degree and still have sort of the same show? Because ESPN's, it's like, how do you tell Kobe it's time? And what do you do if you're the Lakers, or if you're the Yankees and Derek Jeter, or if you're Bobby Bowden in Florida State? Like, there's so much equity built up with him. Like, it's difficult to say that like I have to put you on a time frame. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And even just 2 years ago during the pandemic season when he was from home, I totally agreed with Garrett. I thought, look, he seems more comfortable at home. He really seems to enjoy putting dumb hats on that Reese Davis cutout. Like, let's let him do this all from poolside if that is how he is more comfortable. But I do think as soon as he came back to the live show, you saw how important the interaction with Kirk specifically is for that show, and the back and forth, not the back and forth, but the playing to the crowd, whether as the hero or the villain, when he picks whatever it is he's going to pick. I know that the way you frame that is a good one. You know, the Yankees and Jeter, the Lakers and Kobe. I mean, it's cold, but the one that handled it right was Florida State and Bobby Bowden. Like, at some point, you got to decide, what are we? Are we game day or are we Lee Corso? And I don't want to see, I agree with Ryan Brown. I think the guy gets to choose when he goes. I think if you're ESPN, I think you need to have a very concrete plan of when he goes so that you feel more comfortable limiting him in whatever way it's going to be. If that's what you want to do. If you want to let him keep being Lee Corso, fine. But understand that this online backlash is not doing him any favors each week.
Yeah, and the backlash, like most of the time, backlash is just a lot of being mean. But this seems like it's concern.
I was going to say, I think like the backlash generally comes with like anybody gets backlash because people love to hate on people. I don't think anybody wants to hate on Lee Corso. I don't think anybody wants to say this guy sucks. I don't think nobody wants to say that. But and it's similar to the Jeter in this vein of Derek Jeter and Kobe Bryant. Like, you can let them go as long as they want until it's not noticeable. When it becomes noticeable, like, oh, you don't have it anymore, please don't put me in that position where I've got to make the decision. Please, you realize what's going on and say, okay, we had a good run, but this is it.
All right, we have gone very long, but look, I mean, it's the first week of college football. I apologize for nothing. We will talk to you next week. Until then, please rate, review, and subscribe Media Noise. It is how more people are going to find this show. We'll talk to you next week, everybody.
This concludes our broadcast day.
Thanks for listening to the Media Noise Podcast with Demetri Ravanos. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and leave a review. And check back soon for new episodes. To stay up to date on the latest sports media happenings, visit barrettsportsmedia.com.